Counselor Accents Podcast. Two school counselors who love their jobs. Oh, and they happen to have Southern accents too. Bless their hearts.
I'm Kim Crumley.
I'm Laura Rankhorn.
And together we are, say it, Laura.
Counselor Accents.
See how giving I am? I give you a little bit.
But I never know. You'll take it away the next time.
So I am beyond excited about who we have on the podcast today. And if you're a school counselor, you're going to be excited too.
I have called him, and this is what I want you to be known as from here on out, but I've called him the contemporary father of school counseling.
Oh my gosh.
And
she's telling the truth. That's just
that's way over the top.
Acronym.
Listen, I could think of a bunch of other people that deserve that title way more than I did. But thank
you. We are just so excited to have you on. We have Dr. Russ Sabella with us, and if you have been in school counseling for 5 minutes, then you know that name. And so he has written several books, but the one that we're going to talk about mostly today is Solution Focused School Counseling, the Missing Manual, and it truly is the missing manual. Where has it been? We're so glad that it's out now and it's here. And you also wrote School Counseling Side Hustle. Any other books that I don't know about?
Well, those are the two most recent. I have a few others out there, but those are the two more recent ones, yeah.
All right. And you are also a professor at Florida Gulf Coast University, but why don't you take some time and introduce yourself to our audience? That you probably don't need an introduction, but just take a few minutes and tell us about yourself.
Gosh, you guys are really making me feel good today. Well, let's see, where do you want me to start? So this is my 26th year as a counselor educator. Really focused. School counseling has been it for me. It's what I fell in love with. As a school counselor, I was a middle and high school counselor. And actually before that, I was in mental health. And so I always worked with youth. I was the court adjudicated counselor at one time for kids. And I remember during those days thinking that there's got to be a better way, rather than meeting with parole officers. I wish I could meet more with parents. I wish I could get to the kids a little bit earlier. And then I discovered school counseling, all of the things I had been looking for, to be a little bit more preventative and education focused, looking at not just social emotional issues, but career and academic. So I've been in love with school counseling for a really long time, and I just really feel so blessed to be able to be involved in this wonderful profession.
Well, anybody that follows you or has read your books knows that Kim and I say it's not just our job, it's our passion. And you fit that model too. We can tell through the things that you say and when you speak. And I think that's how school counseling is. It's just like it gets in your blood or something.
Yeah, I think so. And at least for the ones that last a long time.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think you have to, I've heard of school counselors who get burned out, and that hasn't happened, and I've been doing it a little while. It hasn't happened to me yet, but I've had better years than others, I will say. And I think, talking to folks like you encourages all counselors, because we're at all different stages in our careers. And so where did you come up with the idea for this book?
Well, I would say this book has probably been about 25 or 30 years in the making. I was introduced to this model early on. One of the original books I read was In Search of Solutions by Michelle Weiner Davis and Bill O'Hanlon, and that was probably around 1990 something. I as a school counselor, I was more of a kind of I'd say humanistic behaviorist. I kind of got caught up in all the behavior mod things, and I did a little bit of REBT and a little bit of choice theory. When I arrived at the University of Louisville in Kentucky, I met one of my colleagues, Dr. Gerald Scalaire, and it turns out he was into the solution-focused model, and we hit it off. And for a few years while I was there, that's what we did. We were, at that point, the solution-focused model was mostly practiced and being developed in mental health counseling, family, of course. It was originated kind of in couples and family counseling. Substance abuse counseling really found benefit from it, and we were wondering, would this thing work in schools and with kids? And so there was just some initial research being done, some initial people who were writing about this, but we spent probably for 3 to 4 years, we spent every Friday in schools just video recording ourselves doing this with kids and with parents. And we started to even learn that, wait, this could be an application that can be used in leadership and advocacy and committee meetings and parents. And so really since that time, this has been one of my main areas of focus. And I've continued to practice and develop in schools. Right now, in fact, kind of the next area of focus is how do we incorporate solution-focused play counseling and really start kind of moving this down into some of the very earlier grades, looking at really honing in on answering the question, can we actually train parents to take the lead in their own parent conferences using a very kind of abbreviated version of the solution-focused model. So I feel kind of like we've come a long way, but there's just a long way to go. Now, this book is really, people had asked me, and I've done so many workshops in this area throughout the country, and people always ask me, well, have you written a book about it? And I always said no, because I know there were several good ones out there. In fact, Jerry wrote a great book about solution-focused brief counseling, and I just didn't feel like I could improve on those things. But it really was in the last few years where I thought, gosh, I really wish that there was a book that was written just for school counselors and didn't get watered down by trying to include mental health counselors and other people. And I wish there was a book that was more practical, that really looked at how this applied not just to individual counseling, but also throughout a comprehensive school counseling program. And I was asked to write a book chapter for a colleague of mine, which I did. And it was through that experience where I started to realize, oh my gosh, I have enough for a book here. And so it was about a year and a half ago where I started the process, and here we are. Came out just last month.
That's amazing. I mean, I know all of the mental, and it sounds like you've been preparing for this for a couple of decades, but to get it done in a year and a half blows my mind. I mean, that's just so it had to be all up there and had to just kind of come out for it to be done in that time span, especially during a pandemic, and you're getting a book out and in a year and a half. That's amazing, and so glad that you did.
Well, thanks. Yeah, it was definitely one of the toughest ones to write that I've done, but it was a labor of love. I learned a lot. Just when you think you've learned so much, you start to dive into other people's works and then really have to explain it in a way that makes sense. And so it really came out very nicely. I'm real proud of it, and I'm already getting comments and feedback from people who are reading it, saying what you're saying, which is they find it to be kind of a new valuable part of their toolkit. It's got, we developed lots of formulas, lots of steps, lots of procedures, and what's also included in this book is just years of supervising my interns and answering questions from practicing school counselors who get stuck while doing the solution-focused model. So over the years, I've learned so many different sticking points and how to get unstuck. And so that's one of the other things that I think school counselors are finding valuable in the book.
Definitely. When I was reading through it and just your explanation of the miracle question, which I know it's crazy because that's one of like the first things you learn, but I would always get hung up on that question. And the way that you explain it in this book, I thought, of course, it makes so much sense now. We have a lot of counselor educators who have emailed us and told us that they use our podcasts for their students to listen to. And I would like to tell those counselor educators that you need this book. And I emailed you and said this book needs to be the textbook that is used now, because it gives so much history and theory at the beginning, such a good refresher for why we do what we do and how it sort of gives a purpose to what we do and how we do it. And so it's just all the way around good.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. And actually, my primary audience was practicing school counselors, but in that too, one of my other goals was, I think, if I had to be completely honest, was not to work so hard at supplementing all the other existing books that I was using in the theories class. I wish
Yeah.
those books had in it what I was. And so, what I'm hoping is that now that this book is out, that students will be able to hear it and read it firsthand as they're learning it with some really clear, like you said, the clarity, some really good, clear examples, which comes from experience. Out of all the counseling models, one of the things that makes this one unique is that unlike where other models kind of start with theory and then say, well, how can we apply this in practice? This really, it's the opposite. This is a model that was born of practice, really paying attention to how it is that when it is we work with students, and of course in mental health with clients, that what works basically. What is it that we do that seems to explain progress, and then start writing it up. So this was really a model born from practice, and now it's also presented as theory as well.
So I don't want you to give away anything in the book or anything, but I do, for the new counselor that's starting out, that's saying, oh my goodness, what is solution focused brief counseling? What is that? Can you give us a quick definition for those that may need a refresher?
Yeah, gosh, I should have been prepared with just a few sentences. What really is it? I could actually maybe do it in 2 words. This is an empowerment model. Okay, it's a model that empowers students, parents, and other stakeholders to build on their strengths, resources, opportunities, and support systems to reach uh, their current goals and goals that they perhaps would not have even thought of.
That is perfect. That's
So
Yeah.
can
perfect.
we just call you with every student that comes in and say, and I bet you do have to answer a lot of those questions like, I got so and so and this is their issue. What,
Can we
do you
keep you on Zoom and we'll just be like, hang on one second?
I need to just call you guys once a day. I mean, you're oh my.
So can you kind of tell us how your book is very practical, which is Laura and I always say rubber meets the road. I mean, it's got to be usable. So kind of tell us how your book is laid out. Like, do you have just for our audience, kind of how you have this book laid out?
Yeah. Let's see, it may not be in this order. I haven't memorized
Yeah.
it, but typically, how I get started is really looking at an overview, kind of a getting ready to learn the model. So, what are some of the myths that people buy into, and what are the realities of this model? And then just kind of helping people to develop a solution focused mindset. Because one of the sticking points of this model has been to let go of problem solving, looking for causes and explanations of what's not going well, and then moving more towards developing solution focused ears that allows you to focus more on exceptions and hypotheticals. One of the guidelines here is that you do get more of what you focus on. So just kind of in that first chapter, developing the mindset. And then the second part is really the overview. And one of the things I did a few years ago, and this was one of those shower thoughts, I kept thinking, gosh, there's so many techniques and guidelines and ways to do this model. I really wish I had a better way to organize it and teach it in an organized way. And it turns out I came up with a countdown. So I think it's chapter 3 or something like that, where I come up with this countdown. So it's the six techniques, 5 approaches, 4 ways to move from complaints to control, 3 criteria for goals, 2 areas of focus. So all of these. So there's a countdown that helps you stay organized, and then from there, the remainder of the book is application. So how does this work in individual counseling? I've got a whole chapter on how this works in groups with a brief, review of some basic group counseling concepts. Then we've got a whole section on, how does this work with parents? How does this work in leadership and advocacy? I tell a little bit of the story of when it is that I was president of the American School Counselor Association and then also the Florida School Counselor Association. This was many years ago now, but the question for me was, is this Can this be applied in leadership and organizational development? And it turned out the answer was yes. In fact, some of that was already happening. And so, basically, the rest of the book is really branching out to what does solution-focused play counseling look like? How might this work in a peer helper program? Could it be that we could train kids to have solution-focused conversations with other kids? Turns out we can. There was really kind of three parts. It's really the kind of getting ready. Second part is here's how you do it. And the third part is here's how it works across all of the areas of your comprehensive school counseling program.
I'm so excited about this.
I know.
It's like it gets my blood going, and I want to go. I want to just jump in and get going with this. So I love new ideas and new thoughts. And I know this is not a new idea or new thought for you, but for many school counselors, having a tool like this in our hands, going through it, it's just like a blood transfusion. It's like, oh, I've got something here that's going to work. And it just sounds like you've just opened up a Pandora's box. I can just tell, Dr. Sabella, your mind is going and you're thinking, now we can do this and now you can do this. So I don't think we're at the end of this with you. I think you're just unpacking something that's going to grow.
I think you're right. In fact, this was a hard book to finish because there was always one more thing I wanted to include. And, I knew I just had to put it down and put a period on the end of that sentence. But I think this is just the beginning. As comprehensive as it is, I do think it really can be just the beginning.
This is huge. This is why I say you're the contemporary father of school counseling, because I really think this is transformational. Because I remember being in school and learning the different theories, and I did gravitate more towards this one. But like you said, it was very heavy on couples or family or whatever. And it was hard for me to translate it to school counseling. But reading your book, I mean, Kim knows my expression. I throw my pen when I get excited, and I can't tell you how many times I threw my pen because I'm thinking, of course, this is how you do it. Of course, it just makes sense. I loved the section I wrote down Mythbusters, how you talked about a lot of people think that when you're focused on the solution, you're not focused on the feeling. But I loved how you talked about you're not negating the feeling. You're still including that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, a couple of myths. One is that if you're, being a problem solver and a solution focused person are really the same thing when it's not. I'd have these workshops and people would come in and say, well, I'm already solution focused. And by the end of the workshop, if I talk to them, they say, well, I learned a lot and I've got a lot to learn. I said, well, but you said you came in and you were already doing this. And they said, well, what I discovered was that that's not really true. And then, so the insights that I got out of those conversations was that as people who were problem centered and problem solving called themselves solution focused because at the end of that process, they came up with some solutions. Mm. But the two pathways are completely different. Okay, being a problem solver is a whole different pathway than being a solution seeker. And so there's not a huge emphasis on what went wrong. Can you explain it and blame it and reframe it and all of that stuff. Now, one of the things that people have to get used to in this model is the fact that you don't have to understand what went wrong in order to start doing more of what went right. People like to understand causation. So this is a model where there's a lot of letting go, and that's what I find. People get stuck because it's not that the model is difficult; it's actually elegant and pretty easy to do, pretty straightforward. It's us getting in our own way, trying to let go of some of the problem-solving 101 stuff that we learned before. Mm-hmm. And then in the first chapter too, one of the other things, as you indicated, Laura, that I address is just the role of feelings. This model is no different than the other models that I talk about that are all empowerment models, whether it's REBT or choice theory. These focus mostly on behaviors and thoughts, realizing that physiology and feelings will come along. I mean, the reason why we don't focus a whole lot on emotion is because they're hard to deal with. They're hard to manage. They're hard to change. They're sometimes confusing. The good news in this model, though, is that there's a lot of flipping the script. Mm-hmm. And so if somebody says, well, I want to be happier, one of the solution focused questions would be, sounds great. And so when it is that you're finally more happy, what is it that you'll be doing that lets us know that? And so essentially what we're doing is we're flipping the script. We're saying, don't wait to be happier to do these things more, and you'll find yourself feeling happier.
Kim and I were talking about it. We were unpacking this earlier, and we talked about how this book will help school counselors work smarter, not harder, because we have students come in, and I can see in my own day to day that students come in and they unpack all of their stuff, and that feels good. So I create this habit of they come in and they vent and they vent, and I may give them what I think is a solution, but this book showed me there's a different way. And we preach that they're the expert on their problem, but they're also the expert on finding their own solution. And it's going to help me work smarter.
Yeah.
In empowering them. Like you said, it's an empowerment model.
It is. And one of the things that you just said really is so important, which is, oftentimes, there are these levels of students, and I'm not the one that came up with this. This is an idea that's been around for a while. I think, in fact, Steve DeShazer might have been the one who came up with it. But the idea of the customer versus the complainer versus the visitor. I've never had a student come in and say, I've been struggling with this issue and I know what I need to do and I just need your encouragement, They come in with complaints. They come in with wishes. They complain, they want to do that stuff. So in the book, I do spend some time talking about that, being able to say, we let them vent, we let them complain, although it's a means to an end. We don't do it way too long because that doesn't really contribute to anything. We do it enough for them to start to discover what it is that they've been doing that has helped them manage these complaints. And so as students and parents are kind of complaining and wishing in the first few minutes, there's actually a lot of strength in that.
Mm-hmm.
So as a solution focused counselor, I have my ears really trained on what it is they've done, how it is they've endured the pain and the struggles that they're talking about, who is part of their support system. So I'm listening for exceptions. I'm listening for hypotheticals. I'm listening for things that I can compliment and cheerlead, things really to build on. And so that time for complaining and venting can be quite valuable. And so that's what I encourage solution-focused school counselors to do, is to look at it as an opportunity and not, something to just kind of build rapport. I mean, that's part of it, but there's actually good stuff in there.
That is so good. Would you say this book is for all elementary, middle, high school counselors? Does it lean toward one group more than the other?
It is. I was focused on the pre-K through 12, and so I've got some examples at all three levels. I use some authentic transcripts from some meetings I've done at all three levels, and I've also included in the back of the book some classroom lessons and small group solution-focused activities just to kind of get you started. And those activities really are designed for all three levels.
See,
it's great.
See why I say this is the textbook that we need to be using.
And I love that you've got that stuff in the back that we can, look at and dig into and compare it to what we're already doing. So that's
Absolutely.
great.
Absolutely. Now, the model is not a panacea. It doesn't have 100% success rate. I think it has a much better success rate than a lot of other models. In the book, I also have a chapter on solution focus. I'm calling them mashups. They're really kind of some integrated theories. So what does the solution-focused, rationally motivated behavior person do? What does someone who starts out with behavior modification, where really we're focusing on kind of the external, rewards, consequences, schedules of reinforcement, and how do we pivot to make that more internal, empower the student? How do we do this? How does choice theory and solution focus kind of mash up? And so In that chapter, what I did was I tried to really empower school counselors to get the best of various models that fit really well together, and really kind of enhance your toolbox that way.
That is great. I bet that you are in high demand in your speaking engagements, because I can just see, I want to get him in our district for a
I
webinar, and I
know.
bet other school counselors do. Do you do any of that? Do
I
you
have been,
do
well, of
public
course,
speaking and webinars?
I was doing a lot of workshops, and of course now, with the pandemic. But I got to tell you, I'm doing a lot of Zoom conferences and recordings. And here's what, and of course, as I was writing the book, this is not what I was thinking of, but it has become clear to me now that this is a model that lends itself really well over in a virtual or a remote setting. And so, in
Hmm.
fact, what I've done in my workshops now that I give over Zoom is I've recorded myself doing a small group solution focused meeting with some of my students over Zoom, just to show you how that works over Zoom.
Wow.
And so, the reason why this model lends itself well to this new environment is because we're focused. It's the focus. When you're focusing on strengths and resources and opportunities and supports, there's nothing that is highly confidential or sensitive. If a recording of a solution focused meeting with a student ended up getting out there for some reason, we might get blamed for being clumsy or unprofessional, but it would not be that big of a deal based on what it is that we focused on and talked about. So I think counselors are appreciating this model now even more than ever because of this latest environment.
Wow, that is so important, because school counselors are struggling and looking for answers. And if this helps, and I appreciate you saying that this lends itself well to virtual counseling, because it is a struggle. It is a struggle across the United
Yeah.
States with counselors. So that is another bonus, another plus.
In fact, I haven't. It's on my to-do list. Hopefully, I'll get it next week. But I'm in the middle of writing a column, kind of a back-to-school column. I'm a little late on it, but it looks at the sentence. How are you doing? Okay. There's a comma in there usually. How are you doing? Comma. Okay. And typically that kind of is perceived as a closed question. The answer is, yeah, I'm doing fine, or But what I'm suggesting is that we remove the comma and we emphasize the word how. See, it's not how are you doing, okay? It's how are you doing, okay? And so if school counselors could really sit with a parent and a student for 20 minutes to even just use the solution focused techniques to say, let's take a pause because you've been working hard, you've been coping, you've been navigating, you've been overcoming. Let's take inventory of that. Let's stop, and we're not working on any problems. We're not working on any goals. We're just trying to figure out how it is you've gotten here so far. Those kinds of conversations, even in a remote environment, I think are so valuable.
Definitely.
And you didn't throw your pen. You missed a good
I've already
opportunity.
thrown it. I don't have it.
So the
Okay.
punchline
No, I
is,
don't have my pen either.
It's
I
gone.
threw my pen.
remove the comma. It's how are you doing? Okay.
That's your next book.
Maybe.
Yeah.
That is so great. And Laura, we're rolling along here, but we also know how popular your side hustle. Talk to us a
Yes.
little bit about that book, because that's of such interest in just in education in general. May I, Laura, switch gears and talk about this other book? Are you
You
still
can.
unpacked?
Sure. You can. I may not be finished with this one, but yeah, let's switch.
So talk to us a little bit about your other book.
Yeah, so that was one that I co-authored with Stephanie Lerner. Stephanie's from Texas. She was a school counselor. Now she's a district level supervisor or consultant. And gosh, where do I start with that one? To be real honest with you, I hadn't written a book in a couple or 3 years, or it's been a while. So I was thinking about my next project, and um, I I was being a little selfish. I thought, I want to do a book that just would be fun to do, and that would also can meet the criteria of my philosophy, which is the 3 E's. So what would be a book that helped counselors to be more effective, efficient, and enjoy their jobs more, but something that isn't that scholarly, but I could just kind of have fun. And I thought, I've been pretty good at consulting for a very long time, and I get those questions a lot. School counselors email me all the time. I'm setting up a private consultation, or I want to do some more teaching, or tell me more about teachers pay teachers and all this. So I was getting that question a lot. The other question I got a lot, especially from students, is what else can I do with a school counseling degree? Right? I've got summers. I may have some nights, weekends that I have maybe a little extra time. And then, of course, knowing that we can all use an extra paycheck now and again. Um, so all of these things were kind of ruminating. And then Stephanie had been a counselor who, again, asked me, hey, would you mind? I was speaking at her conference in Texas, and she asked me if I could, have a cup of coffee and talk more about how she could get her own private consultation practice to the next level. And she was someone who I was really impressed with. She'd already done a whole lot of great work. She'd already published some books. And so I thought, I think this is a sign. I got to go with this. So this is going to be it. This was the next project. So we spent some time kind of collecting data and writing down our experiences. And we came up with like 7 themes, 7 things that school counselors were making extra money doing. And here was the beauty of it. It wasn't bartending. It wasn't Ubering. The idea was, how can you make some extra money doing what you already love? What's the knowledge and skills and things that you are already doing that if you did outside of school, you could get paid really well to do. And so that's what that book is about, the school counselor side hustle. It's doing more of what you love and earning a little extra income. And of course, while we were writing that, we had no idea that COVID was coming. And you were right. The sales on that book have spiked. I'm guessing it's because counselors are starting to really see the value of kind of having a little bit of a side hustle.
So we're going to link both of those books, because I think that those are great reads for school counselor, and they're very different. That's what is so. I really was interested in that first. It's not your first book, but the one we were talking about, the 2 most recent books, because they're very different. So
they are. Yep.
Yeah.
And that was fun. I had a good time writing that. That was one of those, I'd sit there and just start writing about all my, what I've learned over the years, everything from email marketing to, developing flyers, to how to get through a consultation meeting, to developing an agreement, so it really is just like all the stuff we're talking about is nuts and bolts. So you can read that School Counselor Side Hustle book, and it'll give you a roadmap to start a side hustle or take your current side hustle to the next level.
Well, I'm hearing phrases and words in the solution focused book, and then in what you're saying about that too. And I can tell ASCA is through and through. So it follows the ASCA model. And I really appreciate that you have, is it weaved? What is it?
Yeah, it really is. And I got to say, I've been involved with ASCA for many years, and I learned a lot from the staff there, from Richard Wong and Jill Cook and Eric Sparks and Kathleen Ragstra and all those people. I mean, there's such a wonderful staff there, and they're so talented. And over the years, I've been really blessed to learn a lot about how to get through problems and issues, and it turns out that they were solution focused as well. And of course the model, to have really been involved with that a little bit over the years. I do think that everything we do should be looked at as part of a comprehensive school counseling program that really meets standards and helps kids and families do things better across as we would do for a whole child across all those domains. So yeah, as I'm developing stuff, as I'm developing tools, it always has to relate to my 3 E's, as well as how does it fit into the ASCA model.
That's such a good that's just a good example. Laura and I do a whole lot of framework, and like the 3 E's. Of course, ours aren't the 3 E's, but we are constantly going back to what are our staples,
Like our guiding principles and
and kind of helps guide you in in everything that you do. If you keep going back to, why am I doing this? What are my principles? What am I trying to accomplish?
Right.
So
right.
that's really neat.
Exactly. Many years ago, I had said something in public for the first time, and I think people kind of were a little surprised by it. But I was really honest. Said, I've never been married to school counseling. The reason why I'm dedicated to school counseling is because I think school counseling is it. If there were a better way, if there was another profession that I thought could do better, I would be talking to them right now. But I really believe in school counseling. I think school counseling we're just getting started, even though we've got a bit of over 100-year history. I think the last 25 years have been pivotal. And I honestly think we're just getting started. I really think that school counseling will not just make a difference, but will make the difference in education.
Wow.
I'm going to tell you, I think your book is going to be instrumental in making that happen. I really, really do, because I've read a lot of books. Kim and I are both readers, and this simplifies it, but I think this is going to be the next.
Well, I appreciate that. And that's really one of the highest compliments I can hear. I've got colleagues who love to take simple ideas and complicate them, and I just put my head in put my face in my palm, and it's a lot harder. It's a lot harder to take complicated ideas and make them simple. So that's
what we need. That's what we need.
That's it. Yeah. That's the goal, is to clarify and condense and simplify.
Well, you've done it, and not only that, but in this book, you've also given examples, and that's what Kim and I say, and we've said it already today, but we like to give rubber meets the road. And when I could read through scenarios and you put it in parentheses, okay, this is this type of theory or whatever, I was just like, this is what I needed when I was in school. This is what I need now. So it's huge for school counselors.
Well, thank you for that. And I have to thank all the practicing school counselors, tens of thousands of them, whom I've talked with in workshops, who've emailed me back and forth, who told me their stories about how this model has made a difference in their lives. I tell some of those stories in the book with their permission, of course. And then my students, I've got thousands of hours of them coming back and recordings, listening to their recordings of how they do this. So they've kind of kept me on my toes and helped me to stay relevant and keep learning from other people's examples as well.
Kim, do you want to go back to school? Do you want to go back to?
If he could be my professor, I would love to have gotten this in school. That's why the book is important, because we didn't all get that kind of education that I'm sure your students are getting.
Oh my gosh. Am I red? I think I'm blushing.
Could we be bigger fans? I don't think so. But we just are honored. We are so honored that you're hot because you're in Florida. That's why. And we've already talked about, we had to do the weather report, which is always my thing. I have to do the weather with everybody. Like, what's the weather there? That's my thing. So, but we know you're so busy, and that you would take time. It's humbling, and it just shows that you care about us out here in the working school counselor world, and we just appreciate it so much. And we wanted our listeners to understand how important this book is, and how
thank you guys for all the work that you do. Your podcasts and working with kids and families and doing workshops. Like I said, I saw you guys at the ASCA conference this summer, and I only got to watch 30 minutes of you, but I could have listened all day long.
Thank you. That is such a compliment. Now that we know he's listening, I need you to straighten up, Laura.
I'll work on it.
Dr. Sabella's listening. I need you to stop your shenanigans.
Oh yeah, I'm a fan. Yeah, I'm going to be looking out for you guys.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being on with us.
My pleasure. Thank you.